I don't vote just on somebody's record. I vote also on their moral compass. If I don't trust their compass, I won't vote for them.
This is Faith Complex, a dialogue about the entanglement of religion, politics and art.
Hello, my name is Jacques Berlinblau of Georgetown University, and you're watching Faith Complex. Joining us today is the Reverend Jim Wallis, a person I'm sure many of you know. Reverend Wallis is the founder and editor-in-chief of Sojourners magazine. He's the author of many books about faith and politics, including the forthcoming Rediscovering Values on Wall Street, Main Street, and your street. It's good to have you here, Reverend Wallis.
Great to be here.
Let's explore the private, the personal, and the political. A politician that I think often about is John Edwards, and I don't think anyone in 2008 did more to make the question of poverty come to the forefront of our national discussion than John Edwards. I think he was all over that issue. I think he owned that issue. We all know, we did not get into it here, that there were certain moral indiscretions and moral difficulties in Senator Edwards' life. But I've always wondered about this. What's wrong with having a politician who may privately do some things that we don't agree with, but who publicly endorses issues that we think are very, very important? Why must those folks not be permitted to be politicians, to make public life better?
Well, we're sitting here talking about issues as flawed people. You and I don't know you, I'll say I'm flawed.
I have no flaws.
Yeah, I've heard that. Okay. John and Elizabeth Edwards are friends of mine. I knew him long before he ran for president, and I think he did lift up the issue of poverty more consistently than anybody else did. But John was unfaithful to Elizabeth. It was a terrible breach of their relationship and trust, and a lot of other people's trust too. And I think he's paid a heavy price.
He certainly has. But John could have done a world of good for the types of issues that interest you very much.
Sure, but you know, you asked, should he be permitted? Of course, but people finally, they operate out of trust, you know, and I don't think people have just clear boundaries where the personal and the public are totally separated. People want to know that a political leader has a moral compass. Now, that political leader is human, and we all have failings, and we've made mistakes. And so the public, I think people can forgive mistakes that people make. I think they should. Part of my theology is forgiveness and restoration and all the rest. I believe in that. I want that for John and Elizabeth and for all of us. And whether he'll be able to restore that trust again and have a public career is yet to be seen. That's, I think, what he would like, and in some capacity.
Can he work in a coalition with you, given the?
Oh, I talked with John, Elizabeth before this. I've talked to them since, and yeah, I mean, forgiveness. I think it was as he said, this was a serious betrayal of trust, a sin on his part. And yet, I know lots of sinners, and if they know me, they know one too.
So don't we deprive America of very good men and women by incessantly focusing on their personal sinfulness?
I do think, two things. One, the American people finally have to decide who they trust. And I don't think it's wrong for them to look at someone's personal behavior as a factor in where they trust somebody. I think that's not unreasonable. I do think the media has this kind of obsessive focus on sexuality in particular. And I think it becomes, the tabloid has now become cable news. And I think sometimes that goes way over the top. But I do think people care about someone's personal integrity as a part of what they want to trust about their public service. I think there's not a wall between the personal and the public. But yet, I think grace and forgiveness should always be possible.
For me, there's a wall And for me, one of the great triumphs of the Western world is the existence of that wall. This is what you do in private, is what you do in private, and what you do in public is what you do in public. And I personally feel that we've lost a lot of good folks, a lot of people, like everyone from Gary Hart to Elliot Spitzer, talking about CEO compensation. There are a lot of public servants out there that have been, through the media, as you pointed out, they've had their careers absolutely ruined, and they've had something to give us in the United States.
Well, I know Gary Hart as well. I don't know Spitzer. But there's a difference between what the media does, and I object to the way the media has sort of destroyed people. That's exactly right. But in the end, the public has to decide who they trust and who they don't. I mean, there's no one's dictating that. They can decide that. And so public officials have to win public trust. Should they have to be perfect for that? Of course not. But they have to be honest and transparent. And they have to live lives. They have to have a moral compass. A moral compass is important. Many of our leaders seem to have lost that in the corporate world, in the political world. And it's fair to say that people want to have a leader whose moral compass they trust. Perfect? No. Flawed? Okay. But do they trust this person's moral compass? Can they make a mistake? I hope so. But the compass has to be trustworthy.
If we knew now what we didn't know then about FDR's moral compass, or even Martin Luther King Jr., it stands to reason they might not have been able to do a lot of very good things for the common good. Or is that not a good argument?
Well, if we knew now what we know then, I know I'm a disciple of Martin King. I've listened to every speech he's ever given. But it's also true that the behavior of King and that inner circle in the civil rights movement, in terms of sexual promiscuity, was destructive inside the movement. I can tell you lots of stories. So I think that's a sad part of the story. And it's been talked about, honestly, by the biographers. So I think that's regrettable. And yet, there was tremendous leadership that was offered by King. He was a mixed and flawed character, like all of us. I'm saying those issues aren't unimportant. Should someone's mistake or mistakes deprive them of offering leadership? No. But the public finally decides those things. And so I think in the end, people decide who they can trust.
And personally,
flaws and all.
Personally, are you forgiving by nature with public figures in particular? I'm sure with private figures as well. But
you know, Bono was once asked if he was a practicing Christian, and I love his response. He said, "Yeah, I keep practicing. I hope I get there someday." You have to be forgiving. You know, Jesus is forgiving of me, and my response, because of how I've been forgiven, is to be forgiving. That doesn't mean you don't think that personal behavior is unimportant. You can go so far the other way and you say personal behavior, whether somebody's faithful to their marriage, they're good fathers or mothers, that doesn't matter. Just their votes on issues. I don't vote just on somebody's record. I vote also on their moral compass. If I don't trust their compass, I won't vote for them.
Jim Wallis, thank you so much for this very interesting discussion on Faith Complex. We're so happy you came to talk with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.